My name is Lanette Harris. I'm one of the faculty members here at Newlane University. Today, we are going to talk about Aquinas' 5 proofs for the existence of God. Hopefully, you've enjoyed the video by Gregory Sadler. He did a great job introducing the topic and giving you sort of a bird's eye view of Aquinas' 5 proofs. In this video, we're going to dig a little bit more in depth with each one. But before we do that, there's some things that I think are important to mention. I have heard the argument that the 5 proofs do not tell us who God is or which God Thomas Aquinas is attempting to prove exists. And, these objections would be more valid if that was Aquinas' intent. However, he starts his Summa Theologica with the authority of scriptures. And if you look at the Summa, one thing builds on another. And so after he introduces the scriptures, he then talks about the proofs for the existence of God, and then he goes into who that God is. So Aquinas logically lays out his teaching with each part being the foundation for the next. Thomas Aquinas believes that as intelligent beings, humans are capable of understanding our world by cognitive powers. So because of that, I'm going to give a little bit of a logical background for understanding his proofs. He also recognizes the limitations of human reasoning and separates laws into different categories. Now, later on in this course, we're going to be talking about the different types of laws. So for this class, I'm just kind of explaining a little bit about eternal law and natural law as it applies to the 5 proofs. Eternal law is unchanging and known to humans through its reflection on our minds and is revealed in part through natural law. Eternal law encompasses everything, but it is not fully known by finite beings. What can be known is natural law, which is limited to what we as humans can know. There are universal truths, things that are said to be a priori, yet many philosophers say that our knowledge of them starts with the senses, which we use to learn universal truth by reasoning backwards. We call this a posteriori. For example, by examining triangles, I can learn that it's a universal truth that triangles have three-sided closed shapes. But of course, this is not something that I know innately. I know by seeing a triangle, seeing several triangles, touching them maybe. So this is how Aquinas believes that we learn. So another thing to address is that St. Thomas relied on the philosophy of Aristotle. As such, it is important to understand that for Aristotle and for Aquinas, logic was the necessary tool by which humans understand the world and function in it. So there are 2 fundamental axioms that are important in this discussion, which are the law of non-contradiction and the law of causality. Excuse me. The law of non-contradiction is the most fundamental of all the axioms. And it's very simple. A cannot equal not A at the same time and in the same relationship. So you cannot have, say, a round square. But you could have a table that is both round and square because the top could be round and we could have a square on the bottom. So it's the same thing that's of two different shapes, but not in the same relation to each other. So the second axiom is the law of causality, and this stands in the relation to the law of non-contradiction. Causality concerns the quality of motion that we call change, and its logical sequencing points to a relationship between temporal events. And there is so much that we can go into on causality. Philosophers down through the ages have debated it, but I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of understanding on these two axioms to understand the five proofs a little bit more. So with these two axioms in mind, let's go ahead and start with the argument from motion. Let me share my screen. Okay, so the argument from motion starts with the senses. Humans know that through experience that things move and that nothing can move itself. So if you set a billiard ball on a table, it isn't going anywhere unless what? Something moves it. It could be moved by a pool cube or your hand or an earthquake, but it has to be moved by something since it is not self-moving, and nothing is moved by itself. Since everything is moved by something else, then what moved the first thing? Thomas would say that the reason, reason shows that there would be a primary mover, a mover that is not moved by anything else. Because if not for this, then nothing would move. Our second proof is the argument for efficient cause. Aquinas again relied on the Aristotle and his understanding of a primary source that pushes something into existence. This is similar to the first proof. Efficient cause is the primary source of change, like the knowledge a carpenter has when creating a table. Just like a table is unable to be its own cause, it's not able to create itself, then therefore there had to have been someone who created it. And so the world came into existence through a primary efficient cause, according to Aquinas. In the argument from possibility and necessity, we recognize through sensory experience that there are things in nature that are possible to not exist. In other words, it's not necessary for certain things to exist. In fact, some species have ceased to exist. I mean, do you see any more dodo birds? Since there was a time when each contingent thing did not exist, there could be a time when nothing existed. If nothing existed, then nothing could have been brought into existence. Since we do exist, it seems to be that we have run afoul of one of the two fundamental axioms. So what does this mean? There must be a being of necessity that does not rely on any other for its existence, but instead is the cause of all other beings. Since the time of Aquinas, scientists have developed the theories of evolution and Big Bang, and among others, which attempt to understand how contingent beings came into existence when there was a time when nothing existed. Scientists still struggle with this. However, we won't delve too deeply into these theories in this class, but Newlane does have a philosophy of science class if you're interested in this topic. Okay, I don't have slides for the last two, sorry. But we'll go on and talk about the fourth proof, which is argument from gradation of being. And this one's a little bit different from the other proofs. It states that some things are better or worse than others, and whatever is the maximum of a genus is the cause of what all others are compared to. So therefore, there must be a perfection of goodness that is the cause of all other good things. This is reminiscent of Plato, for those who remember their class on Introduction to Philosophy, or maybe if you took class on Plato. But for Plato, there are things called universals that are the perfection of whatever that thing is. There is a perfection of beauty, a perfection of circles, and so forth. So everything that we encounter are copies of that perfection. But Aquinas is not saying the same thing as Plato, but the similarity is enough to draw from. With Aquinas, the perfection of good is simply not a copy of a universal. He teaches that the perfection of goodness is the cause of all that is good. Since there is a cause and effect, then something or someone is the cause of goodness, and that cause is the perfection of all that is good. And the last one is the argument for design, which examines the world and shows that natural bodies work towards some good, even the natural things that lack knowledge. So for example, planets revolve around the sun. There are natural bodies that work toward a goal which keeps everything moving in a beneficial way. The late Stephen Hawking once wrote, "The latest advances in cosmology explain why the laws of the universe seem tailor-made for humans." While Hawking denies a creator, Aquinas would use logic to respond. Because natural things are directed toward a goal, and that goal being for the existence of humans, there must be an intelligent being directing all things to their end. So these are Aquinas' famous five proofs, and I look forward to reading your carefully reasoned thoughts on the subject.